want to expand the Senate to include diaspora representation, so that we want to include them on public boards where they have the skills and experience to add value to the governance of our public institutions and improve national life and nation building. We will also make it easier for Jamaicans overseas to undertake philanthropic works here at home, cutting through the frustrating red tape that makes it so hard for Jamaicans abroad to do good deeds here at home.
Yes, say what you want.
Well, here's a man.
Mark Golden have no vision for the people. No vision, you know. So we don't now go with it for them and lead on up their way.
Come see them side.
Yes, no vision. It's a Mark Golden them one. He not go win. Neither Bunting. I'm gonna go take the comeback, you know.
Church, Lord, is on fire. Clarkstone, man. Clarkstone is
No. Bare face. And come here with your rubbish.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm not here because I want to be Prime Minister. I came into the party through Dr. Omar Davies because I knew him in the financial sector, where I had been like one of the leading corporate lawyers in Jamaica and very involved in financial engineering. And so when he was Minister of Finance, a lot of the things that required industry input, I was one of the representatives of the industry that he would deal with. I got to know him through that.
And you believe, my peeps, that Mark Golding don't have no plan for Jamaica? You really believe that, don't it? Because I'm not telling you? Well, it's one of two things, my peeps. I am not telling you, according to him, because I'm afraid Andrew thief them. Or I'm not telling you because him know you will not accept them. Yes, my peeps, whatever I'm coming with, him know you will not accept. Now, why is that? May I suggest to you, my peeps, that with the demography of Jamaica being 83% of the people are earning minimum wages and less, with a high percentage of people under the poverty line, you can't come to them and tell them certain things. You can't come to them and tell them, for argument's sake, that you're going to make the rich people pay less taxes, because even as much as you think them fool, they will work out for themselves that if the rich people don't pay the taxes, then who will pay it? Because police have to pay, teacher have to pay, nurse and doctor have to pay, fireman have to pay, light bill have to pay for street light, government workers have to be paid, and all them things where government do, services where government take, they have to pay for. So if the rich man pay less tax, then it means that somebody else have to pay it. Then who? So the poor man will say, who are going to pay that the tax today? And then, of course, we and others will come out and say, no, you can't commit them kind of political suicide if you look for turn government. To come tell the people them what you're really up to. No. So what do? You hide it under a heap of fluff. What is that fluff? Pointing out all of the problems. And by pointing out all of the problems, it triggers off into other people's mind that somehow you intend to do something about them. That now means that you don't have to tell the people say you intend to do anything about it. You just have to point out the problem and then we'll imagine the rest. Well, my peeps, we are going to look further into what plans this Englishman have for you. Yes, have plans, man. Him and the one Bunting, see them there. Two of them against the world. And then they manage to rope in some fool people in the PNP and promise them this and promise them that. Yeah, man, licky. Yeah, man, licky. Then we go straight down in a hell. Go take the devil off a throne and carry him come lead the PNP. If them think so that's the only way they can get in the power. Not them that. That is what the People's National Party has come to. At least those looking post seats, kingmakers, and the wannabes who never will. Everybody with for sale sign stamp on them forehead. Anyway, my peeps, let me welcome you to Jamaica 411. Thank you so much for stopping by, keeping me company as usual. If you're here with me for the first time, welcome, welcome. Please remember to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, share the video, and feel free to leave your comments in the comments section. Also remember to hit that notification button so that you can get notified whenever a video of mine is uploaded. To my subscribers, welcome back. Welcome back. You know, I always appreciate your company. And always looking out to see who is first to comment. And don't worry, I may not mention it yet, but one day I just going to get all of them that I screenshot and pile it on and just make everybody see how you've been doing. Yes, ma'am, it's call up on a name, man. Psycho. All right, so my peeps, you know the ropes. You're going to give the video a thumbs up from now on because you know it's quality stuff you're going to get here. And also share. Please share and then rejoin me. And of course, you know, I thank you all in advance. Great. So now that you're back with me, let's get down to business. So my peeps, you would have heard Mark Golding saying in one of the clips that I shared here that he when Omar was there as Minister of Finance, he was part of what he called the financial engineering of the economy. Him and Mas Bunting was there financially engineering, advising Omar, taking on clients, and doing all sorts of stuff to make money. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all wrong with making money. No, sir. How you make the money? Yeah, something kind of wrong with that if you're not making it the right way. But they said what they were doing was giving Omar suggestions, advice as to how he can get the country out of the predicament. And since it was their idea, it was only natural and fair that they should be the one that should benefit from them ideas. Now, me kind of can see with that a bit. Yes, me can accept that. Yes, me can work with that. Except, what other ideas have they been given Omar? And not just that, but these ideas that they were given to Omar to take the country out of its predicament and to which they benefited from, what was the effect of or effects of those ideas on the overall economy and the eventual collapse of certain elements in the financial sector, right? Somebody had to advise Omar in that, what was it, 1996, to just make that big increase in interest rate to exceed the inflation, right? And that way now, that would settle the market. And it did, but in a very negative way. So we are going to look now at a policy group that Omar Davies had set up, ostensibly to look at the effects of taxation, the various line item of taxation on the economy. That is a very important group and a good place to start to discover what it is Mr. Bunting and Mr. Mark Golding have in store, what it is them not telling us them intend to do. So let us repair to that now and see what we can discover, because search as I may, took me whole day, I could not find the document anywhere. I could only get bits and pieces of it mentioned in newspaper reports. So we are going to look and see now what it is that them have in mind and what it would mean for the different income brackets of people who make up the economy of this society. So let's look now. So the committee that Omar Davies set up to look at the tax and the impact of tax on the economy, it was called the Tax Policy Review Committee. And here, I believe it is July 26, 2003, it says, the Gleaner headline says, Tax Review Committee gets full complement. So these are the members, and I hope they tell us what the scope of this committee is and what they plan to do, according to what the mandate was that they were given by the minister. So let's take a quick look and see what that's about. So the article was published Saturday, July 26, 2003, and it says, full membership of the newly established Tax Policy Review Committee is now in place. The 12-person team, mandated to undertake a comprehensive review of the Jamaica's tax system, completed its first meeting on July 17. The committee is comprised of Joseph M. Matalon, chairman of Manufacturers or Sigma, a bank and fund management company; Eric Crawford, chairman of the Public Accountancy Board; Ethelyn Norton Coke, representative of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica; Betty Ann Jones Carr, accountant and private sector organization of Jamaica representative; Mark Golding, lawyer and PSOJ representative; Lloyd Goodley, Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions representative; Dr. Wesley Hughes, Director General of the Planning Institute of Jamaica; Wilfred Bagaloo, Senior Manager, Pricewaterhouse; Alison Peart, Taxation Specialist; Velma Blake, Deputy Financial Secretary, Taxation Division, Finance Ministry; Effie Crooks, Managing Partner, Crooks, Jackson and Burnett; and Derek Brooks, businessman. Now, I am looking. I don't believe I see that any economist is present on this board. I also notice of this 12-man team, you have how many now? That's 3 representatives from the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. I don't see any representative from the Exporters Association. I don't see any representative from the Manufacturers Association, the Chambers of Commerce all over the island. I don't see the Taxi Association. This is what now? This is a committee of mainly accountants, 1 lawyer, and 2 businessmen. Derek Brooks and Joseph Matalon himself. Mark Golding, the lawyer, 1 trade unionist, and Wesley Hughes is the Director General of the Planning Institute. And let's see now. Then you have the Finance Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. And then you have another accounting firm, Crooks, Jackson and Burnett. So this was not a well-represented committee at all. But let us see what it is they came up with and what proposed changes that Mark Golding wants to see in this country, in the tax system and economy. And this committee will tell us a lot about that. So let us read on. The formation of the committee was first announced during Minister of Finance and Planning Dr. Omar Davies's closing 2003-2004 budget debate presentation in April. It is intended to examine the main sources of tax revenue and assess their impact on society in light of the government's fiscal strategy and international experience. Examine. According to the Finance Ministry, the committee will examine, among other issues, the impact of the current rates of personal income tax, corporate income tax, and general consumption tax on, and they're quoting now, incentives for work, investment, and economic growth in general. It will also look into the impact on poverty and the equitable distribution of the tax burden. You hear that? I need you to remember, this particular line. It will also look into the impact of poverty and the equitable distribution of the tax burden. Make a note of that. And I particularly want you to take a note of it, my peeps, because it is the impact of the present tax system as it was at that time on the poverty situation in the country that they were supposed to look at. They were supposed to look at the current rates of personal income tax, that's the PAYE, as well as corporate tax, and the GCT. They're supposed to look at all three taxes in terms of whether or not they provide sufficient incentive for work or investments and economic growth. What impact they would have now on economic growth. That's what they're supposed to be looking at. In other words, what the government wanted to find out at the time is what kind of effect is the PAYE, corporate tax, and GCT having on productivity, as well as poverty in the country, as well as whether or not there is an equitable distribution of tax burden. That's the long and short of it. Where significant, the inefficiencies and/or inequities are to be identified. The review should recommend alternate tax structure or rates designed to address these weaknesses, the ministry said in a release issued Monday. During the budget debate, it was revealed that businessman Mr. Matalon had been appointed to head the committee. At that time, Minister Davies also said he would be making nominations from the opposition Jamaica Labour Party and other special interest groups for the other members of the committee. And to talk about the review now. The last comprehensive review of the tax system was carried out in the mid-1980s. Siaga provided the information. It was in January of 1986. I read elsewhere. So Dr. Davies said a new review was now needed to simplify the tax arrangement. There has been much criticism of the tax system, which fails to capture in its net a large section of the economy, thereby placing a greater burden on those in the formal economy. So now you see what the entire scope of this committee was supposed to be. They're supposed to be looking into the impact of three taxes, main taxes: the GCT, income tax, and corporate tax on the economy and its contribution, if any, to poverty. They are also supposed to be looking at the distribution and the equitable distribution of the tax burden. And they're also expected to simplify the tax system and make proposals as to other tax rates or tax regime, I suppose, if they find that the system is inefficient or inequitable or both. So that's the purview of what this committee was set up to do. So let's now turn our attention to what it was that they came up with and what they propose to be an efficient, equitable system that will provide incentives for work, investments, and economic growth, in addition to which it should have the impact of lowering the poverty in the country. So let us see now what it was that Mark Golding and this committee proposed were the solutions to these identified issues. The next clue as to what the committee was set up for, we find on the tax revolution underway. So we're going to read one little section and then move along. And it's a quote from Omar Davies. It says the only instruction given to the Tax Policy Review Committee is that their recommendations must be revenue neutral. Dr. Davies said, now what is meant by revenue neutral? That means if they're making a proposal to, say, change the tax regime, for instance, let us say they argue that corporate tax should be the same as income tax. Corporate tax in those days was 33 and a third percent, and income tax was 25%. So they wanted the corporate tax to be the same as the income tax. Now, as they proposed that, let us say for argument's sake, the corporate tax that the government was collecting was, say, 100 million. And to reduce the tax from 33 and a third percent to 25% meant that the government would lose, say, 30 million. What they have to do, if the government is to accept the proposal, they have to now go and look where they're going to get that $30 million from that the government will be losing. So they will then go and say, increase this tax here or increase that tax there. You will get 30 million from the specific increase, and that is what is known as revenue neutral. The government must not lose any money and it must not gain more than the tax that it's giving up. They must get back that dead 30 million. See my peeps? So that is what is meant by revenue neutral. So them coming to Omar and tell him, so them want corporate tax down, they must go get the tax from somewhere else. And that, my peeps, is what we're going to be paying close attention to. Because Mark Golding, who now will look for turn Prime Minister of Jamaica, sat on the committee, made a decision with the others that this is where we want to get the money from in order to be able to pay less taxes for ourselves and our companies. Are you following me, my peeps? So make we go and read. This is another report from the Gleaner, headed Matalon Committee Tax Winners and Losers. Listen to this part. The radical overhaul of Jamaica's tax structure proposed by the Matalon Tax Policy Review Committee, which includes Mark Golding, could see a new set of winners and losers emerging in the local economy. This is the opinion of this writer of what it is Mark Golding and that committee was proposing. Remember what they said? A new set of winners and new set of losers in the local economy. Let us read what he said. Workers and the owners of capital stand to gain income, while consumers would lose under the tax reform presented to Parliament last Tuesday. But the overall economy could be the biggest beneficiary of the proposals put forward by the Joseph M. Matalon chaired committee. That is what them say, right? You're going to make the workers and the owners of capital, them going gain. But listen to who them say now. The consumers going to be the loser. And the consumers will be the loser. Why? Because the loss to the government is going to be made up for by taxing those things that the consumers use. Consumption tax. The consumers, my peeps, if we liken the economy to a motor car, the engine would be the producers. But you see the oil that is needed to make the engine work are the consumers that. And your consumers, they have a particular income profile. What is that? The vast majority of them, 83% of them, earns minimum wages and less. You have a consumer base that is largely made up of poor people. 1% rich, and the other, 12%? Less than that are middle class. Right? So you know, believe that you're smart. You are going to reduce the tax burden on those who are working. and better off, and those who are rich and the middle class. And you need now to find the revenue from somewhere. You're going to put it on consumable items, right? That are going to affect your consumers. Some of them not working. Some of them working, some of them not working. But they're at the bottom end of the social ladder. And you don't expect that there was going to be a fallout, because if they were doing their research, and it's unbelievable that the man from PIOJ was there, Wesley Hughes, and he couldn't point that out to them, that the minimum wage earners in Jamaica and those who earn less spend a high proportion of their income on food, somewhere between 50 and 60%, and transportation. So once you put a burden on them of taxation, which now becomes a direct taxation, when you go to the supermarket and you buy something and you go to the counter and them says $1 for it and 15% for GCT, that's a direct taxation. What then called indirect? No, there's nothing indirect about that. You're paying the tax right away. The government may not get it right away because of how the system set up, but when you buy, you pay right away. That's a direct taxation that Mark Golding, Matalon, and the others propose as the way to grow the economy, create jobs, and equitable distribution of the tax burden. And when Bruce Golding and Audley Shaw implemented, what happened? 5.1% decline in the economy, 13 quarters of negative growth. It was a failed policy. Why? Because the man that they were taxing was the very same man who they needed to buy the goods that they were selling and them services. Yes, my peeps, once again, these private sector know-it-alls that know not a damn thing set themselves up for a mighty fall. And my peeps, no ask if them ever fall. But let us continue and see what it was that they did and what they proposed. And guess who was part of all of that? The English bird were prims up in our parliament illegal. Yes, tick and ticking it, man. And we must make this point before we move on, my peeps. That man who is now leading the PNP, the Englishman, right? Well, look for the Prime Minister of Jamaica, was sitting on this committee, a committee which had workers and the owners of capital. That means to say the businessman them. We have the money and I spend the money and own the business them. And them benefit. And them him did want benefit. Those are the people that he wanted to benefit. And where was the money to come from that the government was going to lose? From me and you. From the poor people. The pensioners. Don't forget the pensioners. That's where him want the money to come from. Omar never take it on. Bruce Golding and Audley Shaw took it on. And what resulted? And we did a video on it already. 13 quarters of negative growth. That's what they call it. 5.1% decline. Right? And this when our trading partners were not declining. They were having small growth. Yes, 1 year they might have declined. Britain declined, I think, 2 consecutive years. Right? We had about 3 consecutive years, and it's in the last year, which would have been 2011, that we saw a little growth. Right? 5.1% decline in our production because Audley Shaw, at the height of all of what was going on, was implementing Joseph Matalon, Mark Golding, and others in that team. It was their idea, right, that Audley was implementing. And that was what caused the decline in our economy. Because when you tax your poor taxpayers them on a fixed income, earning, what was it at the time? 2,500 per week. And you are increasing taxes on him, then he's going to have less money to spend. Because right away the tax is acting as if it's inflation. It is acting as if somebody raised the price of goods on him. in money can only stretch so far. And because of that, a lot of business collapsed because the money was now in short supply. Because the government was seeking to get its taxes from the people who can ill afford it, rather than go take it from the one them who have disposable income. Yes, my peeps. That was Mark Golding. That was Mark Golding. He sat on that committee. He made a decision with the others that this is how they're going to proceed. But my peeps, if you think you hear nothing yet, make we now go take a look at what it was that Mark Golding and that team proposed that the government should do to make the tax system equitable. My peeps, I'm going to beg you one favor. Please do not sit at the edge of your seat because you will drop off and I don't want nobody get hurt for what I'm going to read for you now. This now is an article in the Gleaner. I believe it's March 25, but I'll look closer. It says, Matalon defends tax proposals. And we're going to read to see what that is about. So, Joseph M. Matalon, chairman of the Tax Policy Review Committee, has cited the need for greater public discussion on the various proposals of the committee. Mr. Matalon was the guest speaker at the PricewaterhouseCoopers Forum on Tax Reform held at the Jamaica Conference Center on Monday. To date, the recommendation for tax on capital gains has created a stir. Pundits have made predictions of the subsequent crash of the Jamaica Stock Exchange if implemented. So you may be wondering what the dickens is this capital gains tax that we're trying to introduce. Well, the capital gains tax is a tax that you only pay when you sell assets and you make profits on those assets. So it's on the profit of the assets that you pay this tax. So let's say, for instance, your house is an asset. You bought the house 5 years ago for 10 million and sold it for 15 million. Right now, you do not have to pay any capital gains tax because there's no capital gains tax in Jamaica. You'd pay transfer tax, stamp duty, and to register the property. With the introduction of capital gains tax, though, you would have to pay a tax on the profit, right, that you made when you sold the assets. So on the 5 million, you'd pay a tax on it. Let's say the tax was 10%, you'd pay 500,000. So that's what the capital gains tax is all about. And there are other assets that it applies to, like bonds and stocks and so on. They too are assets that if you were to buy them and sell them back and make a profit, you would pay a tax on that. So that was what Mark Golding and that team that he was on, that's what they were proposing. But my peeps, I've been promising you a bombshell, and the bombshell is now here. Look at what else Mark Golding was proposing with that team. Lord of His mercy. I want to invite you, all of you, to please take a look at that bulleted section on the right where it says selected tax reform recommendations. These were some of the recommendations that were being proposed by that committee Mark Golding was on. Remember what this whole thing is about. This whole thing is about discovering what economic plans that this man Mark Golding has for us. He's not telling us, but we are going back into his past to look at what it was that they were proposing on that committee in order to know what it is that he intends to do. So let us take a closer look at what Mark Golding and the others were proposing. The first thing they were proposing is a total elimination of stamp duty. A total elimination of stamp duty. Now, my peeps, you remember what they were charged to do? Make sure that whatever they are proposing is revenue neutral. To eliminate stamp duty, which is paid on almost everything that you do, right? You have to put a stamp on it. If you're going to register a company, you pay a stamp. There's a stamp on it. Court documents, you have to pay stamp duty. A whole host of stuff you pay stamp duty on. It's a significant revenue for the government. So if they're going to give that up, they're going to have to show Omar where the tax is going to come from to take its place, right? So who it is that pays stamp duty? Even when you pay a rent receipt, you notice on a rent receipt, or you get any receipt from any business at all, they put a stamp on the back of it. That is the stamp duty that you're paying. Yes. So they want that removed. Removal of transfer tax from transfer of securities. So they wanted to introduce capital gains tax and remove transfer tax from securities when you're transferring it. Because if you put the capital gains on top of that, that is more money that will be paid by the persons who are selling and buying stocks. And that would affect the stock market. So they want the transfer tax to be removed. I don't know what that amount is, but they want that removed. Who is it that will benefit from that? Obviously, the people who have money to be buying stocks and bonds and all them something there. Well-to-do people, not poor people, right? Good. They want the reduction of transfer tax on real estate transfers from 7.5% to 5%. When you're selling a real estate property, a house, land, vacant land, you pay transfer tax. At that time, 7.5%. They have since lowered it to, I think it's even below 5%. Not sure, but they have lowered it. Right? Again, who benefits from that? Is that something that the poor man going to benefit from? Who getting $15,000 a week? Transfer tax on death only charged on real estate property at 5% instead of 15%. So there is something known as death duty. When people die and you transfer the property, known as transmission, then you pay transfer tax to the tune of 15%. They want that reduced to 5%. Now, for what I have been reading for you so far, let us take the stamp duty out. But when it comes to the transfer of tax on securities, they want that removed. Stocks and bonds, take the transfer tax off that. Now, that could encourage persons to buy stocks and bonds. And when companies go on the stock exchange to raise funds, that could stimulate some kind of economic activities, right? All right, let's leave that. But when it comes to the death duty and reducing the tax on it from 15 to 5%, what the dickens that has to do with economic growth? What does that have to do with the equitable distribution of the tax burden? That somebody who is wealthy or somebody who has something to pass to somebody else, that person who survives is being required to pay 15% of the value of the property. And they want that reduced to 5%. And the 10% now, with whatever amount the government was going to lose, they were going to get it back from the consumers, the poor people. So the poor people now must subsidize somebody who is much better off than them. That's what that amounts to. You paying the tab for somebody who is richer than you. I mean, how would that come into anything that the government asks them to go and do? How is that going to help to eliminate poverty? How is that going to grow the economy or create productivity in the workplace? You see what I'm saying, my peeps? They're going to remove the tax from those persons who are better off in the society, those who have assets and who will inherit these assets, and put it on the back of the poor man. That's what they were proposing to do. Let me continue. And now, my peeps, hold on tight on your seat, because I'm going to read this one for you. Listen to what they say. Abolition of education tax and hard statutory deduction. My peeps, you never hear me say a while ago, right? They are proposing that the heart statutory deduction be abolished. Do you understand what that means, my peeps? When them say them want it abolished, they mean to say them no want to pay it no more, and them no want the workers them no pay it no more, and by extension, they're the workers. They pay themselves a salary at the companies that they work for, right? So nobody thinks it's the secretary and the accounting clerk or the salesman or telephone operator or any clerk that working at the business. Nobody thinks that them are talk about. Are themselves. It's all about themselves. That's what they were thinking about. And they, Mark Golding, sat in that committee with them. And they decide that the hard trust NTA, that must be abolished. When you abolish a statutory deduction, it's as if you abolish the statutory deduction for the NHT that went build house. Hard trust statutory deduction is to go towards the training of the young people or training of people in general who seeks to be trained, right? And in some instance get working experience. That's what it was set up for as far as I remember. And them want the hard trust statutory deduction to be abolished. And by extension, the hard trust NTA to be scrapped. This is what Mark Golding wanted. He wanted hard trust NTA scrapped. And if you think it's joke me making, my peeps, or if you think me exaggerating, here is a heading: tax reforms can benefit small businesses, right? And this is coming from the Tax Policy Review Committee. Listen to what they said. We begin at the beginning. Chief Executive Officer of the ICD Group, Joseph M. Matalon, says that the recommendations of the Tax Policy Review Committee can benefit small businesses by stimulating growth of the sector. So he told them some things that he believed would stimulate the growth that he's talking about. And you'll read over on the right, it says elimination of the heart and education taxes. Remember, Heart Trust NTA is being funded like the NHT, like the NIS, from the contributions that I do believe the workers make the contributions, and then the employers are expected to make the matching contribution. And I do believe, if I remember right, these are charged on gross profit. If I'm not, yes, I believe it's charged on gross profit. Anybody who know these things can correct me in the comment section, please. Yes, I'd be very grateful. But let me continue. So they say here, elimination of the heart and education taxes. Listen to what Matalon said. We, what say? Him? No, he said we think it's high time they are abolished. Who is sitting in that committee? Mark Golding. So when Joseph Matalon said, we think it's high time they are abolished, that we includes Mark Golding. That is our evidence, my peeps. Our evidence. We can go road, go talk it now. Mark Golding wants the hard trust NTA abolished. We don't talk things over here, my peeps, unless we walk with the receipts. Elimination of the heart and education taxes. We think it's high time they are abolished. They are taxes disguised as statutory deductions. They are regressive. You hear what the man say? You hear what Mark Golding think? Them other set not really important, because them not look for turn prime minister, But we're very much concerned about the thinking of Mark Golding. And Matalon is telling us, my peeps, that Mark Golding thinks it is high time that the hard trust tax is abolished. And what it is that he thinks the hard trust is, Uno right to know. The man in a barn, he no come from Anya. What it is that him think the hard trust is, hear what I'm saying? They are taxes disguised as statutory deductions. Taxes disguised as statutory deductions. In other words, for certain, the education tax is a tax that goes into the pool, into the consolidated fund, and spend with the other taxes. But to my certain knowledge, a hard trust contribution goes into that trust and is used to fund the training of people. So when Mark Golding is going to refer to the hard trust contribution as taxes disguised as statutory deductions, what is he talking about? What is he saying? This is them, lying to the small business people, telling them that hard trust is not about training people. No, like government tell, what them doing is collecting this tax, right, under the guise that it's a statutory deductions to do something for train people. And them have to say what they say in order to get the support. Them have to lie. Then look at the next recommendation, my peeps. Merging of the administration of the NHT and National Insurance Scheme. Why? For what purpose? My peeps, uno please tell me what is the connection between the National Housing Trust and the National Insurance Scheme. What is the connection? One of them is about house and the other one is a pension scheme. How do you go about merging the administration of National Housing Trust, which exists to provide housing for people, right? Low income housing, and the National Insurance Scheme, which is about providing pension for people. And remember what Matalon said, no? Him say, we. So this is part of Mark Golding's plan, right? To merge the administration of the NHT with the NIS and eliminate hard contribution he is calling taxes. He was part of this committee that came up with that and then went around the corporate area meeting with people at the Terra Nova as they were here, right? And they met elsewhere at the conference center. All about the place they were meeting with people, promoting this as the way to grow the economy. And is him now want on Prime Minister? Now you see why them spending $1.6 billion so far, Bunting and Golding, to put themselves in a Jamaica house. Now you understand why. It is the tax system that is going to make them rich. So that when they make money, them get to keep the money that they make. And then we, like slaves, work and make them rich and then pay them bills too. In a country, I want to think about this, my peeps. This is a country with a working population of 1.4 million, and there's a high number of those persons who are unskilled workers. Unskilled workers, or what they used to call in the old time days, laborers. And here is an entity that was established for the purpose of training the people, making them more productive, and be in a position to earn more money for themselves and their families. Created to provide skilled workers for the very same private sector people who now saying them want it scrapped. And why? Because they are being asked to pay for it. Mark Golding and Matalon and all these people claim that they want what is best for the economy of Jamaica and they want the economy to grow. And yet an entity that exists for that purpose, to help the economy to grow, them want it scrapped. Mark Golding was part of that team. That is his policy, my peeps. To scrap the Hard Trust NTA and mash up a country. And there you go. You all thought that Mark Golding has no plans for Jamaica. Well, you heard them. You heard the things that he wanted introduced in Jamaica. And just in case you forget, let me itemize them for you. Mark Golding is of the view that the GCT should be increased and the base broadened. What does that mean? It means that he wants all goods and services to be taxed He wants GCT to be on all goods and services. That's what he believes. The next thing that he believes is that we should have a capital gains tax introduced in Jamaica, right? So that if you're selling any of your assets and you make a profit on it, you pay tax. So that's the introduction of a new tax in Jamaica that we don't have now. That is what him into. What else is he into? He wants the death duty to be paid only on real estate properties, such as land, or if you have house and land, right? That's what is known as real estate property. And he wants to reduce the tax from 15% to 5%. If I remember right, that tax is coming from about 40%. He wanted to reduce further to 5%, but he only wanted to apply to house and land. When it comes to those of them that own yachts, businesses, and then the shares would now be transferred to the beneficiary, no tax not supposed to pay upon that. Them don't want a tax pay on the chattels they may own, right? And furniture, them don't want a tax pay upon them things there, right? Only on real estate. And if the real estate is owned by a company, then it's only the shares of the company that will transfer, and those shares will not be subject to debt duty. That is what they're trying to accomplish. Now, who would foot the bill if those taxes aren't paid by them? By other people. Middle class people and poor people. And one of the most amazing things that this Englishman believes is that the Hard Trust NTA should be defunded. At least not from statutory deduction. They made no proposal as to where the money would come from to fund it. They just wanted scrap. They wanted the contributions that are made to Hard, which is largely paid by businesses. They want that scrap. That's why man believe. So when him come telling you about he's into education and early childhood education, all of that don't mean a damn thing. Him only telling you that because that is what you want to hear. Him don't believe none of that. What him believe is what him and Matalon and the others sit down in that committee and came up with. Those are the tax policies they want for Jamaica. And that is why him come about. That is why Matalon a PP clock back at him. Both him endorse him to lead the PNP, because them see an opportunity now to feather them own blasted nest. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. Shifting the burden of the taxation from them who can afford it and put it on the backs of the poor people. And what you think is going to happen to the economy? Jamaica turn worse than Haiti. The one little thing that poor people have. Can send them children to free. If I remember right, it's now free. Talk to me in the comment section. Isn't it free to go to Heart now? And is the government not paying the young people some stipend to go and get some training? In a country that has a problem where a high proportion of the people are unskilled, and you have an entity like Hard Trust NTA that is supposed to give the people skills training, and you want to cut that out, then you come with your mouth full of lies. You want to create a Jamaica and move Jamaica from a low skill, low wage, and low tech society to what? To high tech, high skill, high wages. And then you lock down the Hard Trust NTA. You sit down in a committee and formulated this kind of idea out of your head for lock down the Hard Trust NTA because you don't want to pay the money to keep it going. And you want to go in a Jamaica house? You're joking. My peeps, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me, for sharing, liking, subscribing, and leaving your comments in the comments section. Until next time, take good care of yourselves and walk good.
I came into the party through Dr. Omar Davies because I knew him in the financial sector, where I had been like one of the leading corporate lawyers in Jamaica and very involved in financial engineering. And so when he was Minister of Finance, a lot of the things that required industry input, I was one of the representatives of the industry that he would deal with. I got to know him through that.